Welcome to USA Global TV and Radio, where our mission is to provide education, entertainment, hope, and inspiration. USA Global TV and Radio connects you with experts and audiences all around the world every single day to help you succeed in business and to live a richer life. Visit us at usaglobaltv.com to learn about career and life-changing training and mentoring programs like the Listening Mentor. Subscribe to our newsletter to stay informed about our special programs and offers. Discover how you can become a guest on one of our shows or a host or producer of a USA Global TV and Radio show of your very own. That's USA Global TV and Radio, where the doctor is always in.
Hello, everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. This is USA Global TV and Radio, where we provide world-class education, entertainment, hope, and inspiration. I'm Dr. JACALYN KERBECK, and we are on the Listening Mentor show today. We're going to be discussing tips for how to deal with conflict. First, I'd like to welcome all of our new viewers from around the world, whether you are watching or listening. We are super appreciative to have you here today. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel, which is USA Global TV and Radio, and download our app on Roku worldwide, as well as Amazon Fire. Joining me is the star of our show. She is known as the Harley Street Stress Expert, and she helps people literally bust their stress. She's a certified therapist, and she has so many degrees and certifications and accomplishments. It would take us weeks to go through it, but she is an expert. Let's welcome Caroline.heward. Hello, Caroline. Woo! How are you doing?
Welcome. Thank you.
You are welcome. You are welcome. It's always good to see you. We've got this chemistry between the two of us where we just really work together well, and we like each other. We love each other. We're not dating, just letting people know we are the consummate professionals. So one thing I wanted to mention, by the way, on the intro, I really love that part, the first intro video clip where we celebrate elevated listening, and you see the therapist just sitting there shaking her head and not saying a single word. So tell us about your role as a therapist and how important listening skills are.
Thank you, Dr. JACALYN. Yes, I actually recently sat an exam, an assessment exam towards one of the new training qualifications that I've been doing in coaching and counselling. And the feedback that I had from the person that was watching me and assessing my work physically in terms of the demonstration session and also my written work was the fact that she couldn't believe when she was watching the client therapist interaction how much silence I used, how much allowing the person, the client in front of me, to literally just explore. And she said that it just stood out for her, and that it is important for the person to be heard, because when you allow them to say everything they need to say, that then allows them probably the space to say more than what they would have said unless you had interrupted. And so if you're interrupting, then that allows them to keep short what they're saying and divulging more of the problem. And it's important to give that space of silence and nodding or, gesturing with your eyes rather than feeling the need to judge, interrupt, or do any of the other things that will obstruct the person from their own physical exploration.
Absolutely well done. Thank you so much. And we're talking today about tips for dealing with conflict. And one thing that comes up for me, just in what you said and the work that you do, is when you are having a conversation with someone and they continuously are interrupting you or over talking you, that right there starts a conflict because one person cannot be heard. Can you give us some reasons as to why someone will continuously interrupt or overtalk someone?
Thank you, Dr. JACALYN. It's probably because they are not interested in what you have to say and they're waiting, or perhaps if they're interrupting, not waiting for their opportunity, for their time to say what they think, what their views are and what they believe. And so when you're speaking to that person that's constantly interrupting you or over talking you, it's because they're definitely not listening to you. And so you would, drawing that conclusion, what's the point of speaking to them?
I love it. Now, does that mean in that moment, in that conversation, that we are actually a very boring person? We're not using labels, but someone else doesn't find what we're talking about to be of interest. That doesn't mean that we are not interesting or what we have to say is not interesting. What does it mean?
What it means is that the person has come in with their own agenda. They haven't come to listen, to participate in a conversation of meeting of minds. They've come to get their point across and for their perspective only. So it isn't about you, this is about the other person. And sometimes, especially if people have been alone for long periods of time, people living on their own, or they're in an alone situation and they've got this opportunity that somebody's come into their space and they just want to download. So they're not interested to hear, they're just interested to download.
I love that also. And something else that's coming up for me is that it's all about setting boundaries and asking for permission. So if someone is preoccupied with something and we're going to download an hour worth of information, they might not have the mental capacity or interest at that moment. And we did a disservice in not asking, is this a good time or how would this be? So when you think about conflict, we could be creating setting the stage for conflict to occur.
Yes, absolutely. Because if we don't have great boundaries or proper boundaries, then we are giving permission, because we have not good boundaries, for somebody to come in and literally annihilate us. So it is about having respectful boundaries for ourselves so that others become respectful of who we are and our own boundaries. If we don't have good boundaries, it does allow the other person to come in, walk all over them, or indeed talk all over them.
I have a follow-up on that, which is it possible, if we continuously have this discourse or this conflict with someone, that maybe this is a relationship that isn't meant to be? Or is it basically two people who are not willing to make it work?
Well, that's a good point, Dr. JACALYN. Two people not willing to make it work is probably what you would think. It's important to have a place of compromise to both be heard, and so that both people can put their perspectives, their point of views across. And if that isn't possible, if there is no middle ground to meet each other in the middle ground, then you as the person in that's not happy in that relationship, whether it be physically in work or in an intimate or in a family relationship, there has to be some decisions about how you move forward with that and a frank conversation. And if you can't get a word in edgeways and the other person isn't listening, one of my suggestions is to leave a voice note, because that there is facility now to use voice notes on our tech like WhatsApp and on Messenger, or indeed write a message so that you can be seen to be heard because you've got your message across. And then it's up to the other person what they do with that. It is important to have share of voice. And if you're not being heard, then it's important to find a way to be heard, because the other person is so busy in their own contradictions and their own conversation that they're not seeing you're not being heard.
And that's when the conflicts can really blossom, if you will. So what I've also found is if I bring it to someone's attention, especially because I teach people how to listen, and they continuously just do the same behavior, sometimes I just won't even say anything, but I'll think to myself, this is a coaching project that I don't really feel like taking on because it's a personal relationship. And I might just lose interest because I don't believe they have any interest in actually trying to make the conversation or the relationship any more fruitful or any more peaceful or calm.
It's a good perspective, and at the same time, we're not all coaches, and we're not all of the same training standard. And so there are many people that don't know how to have a shared approach and to listen actively as well as to engage physically in a conversation and a relationship. And so I always err on the side of the fact that the other person doesn't know, and I do a little bit of coaching or teaching if I have the time to get what I need from it, so that I've gone there and done what I think that I need to do to understand whether it is for me or not for me.
And so your point is very well taken in that everybody is not a coach. Everybody doesn't have the skill set. And also, everyone doesn't have the patience. If you think about it, if you have a very hectic schedule and you're constantly being pressed from deadline to deadline to deadline, and then you come home and you have to hear, you're never home, or you didn't do this, or you didn't do that, you might literally not have any more bandwidth to give anymore.
Yes, that's very true, because we're all human, and human we are, and we're here in relationships, whether it's for a reason, a season, or a lifetime. So it is about why we're there. It could be an intimate relationship that's not working, that you've stopped communicating. It could be a work relationship that is not working because there are different agendas and different appreciations or understanding of what's required from each other. And so I would always work from the place of, okay, there's obviously some misunderstanding here, so it's important for me to state where I am, so that then we can look at where the other person is and see if there's some place to work together in a place of compromise, or in a place that there is a win-win on both sides, so that nobody loses and everybody feels heard and being seen.
Absolutely. And Caroline, what I'd like us to talk about now is, if we think about dealing with conflict, let's set the stage for positive reinforcement and behaviors that are really conducive to having communication that's effective. So, for example, you are in a new relationship with someone, maybe it's a new friend, maybe it's a new coworker, maybe you can establish some type of boundaries from the very beginning about how you can avoid having conflict, although conflicts can be positive as well.
Yes, they can be, and it can be conducive to having conversations to look at other perspectives. And it's important to be open, I feel, to other perspectives, because you can listen to somebody else's point of view, and it might sway what your thoughts are about a specific aspect or topic that you're discussing. And so I feel it is important to be open and then still have your own decision as to where you sit. And yes, it can be very positive in the sense that you will see things that perhaps you didn't see previously.
Yes, keeping an open mind and open eyes, I feel are truly important. So let's just talk about the workplace, and there is some type of ongoing conflict. Maybe it's on a project and you are intimidated to let the other person know, hey, maybe there's another way, or maybe we can figure this out, or how can we both meet in the middle and have a compromise? What do you do? What are the steps?
Thank you, Dr. JACALYN. The thing that I would do is to understand what the other person wants to get out of it, their perspective, their point of view, because it's important to understand what their needs are and to listen without any judgment, to actively listen, and not just to their words, but actually their body language and their gestures and their eyes, because the eyes say a lot of things. So to understand whether it's a value thing for them, whether it's a physical thing for them, whether there's emotions involved, because sometimes we act differently when there are values and emotions. If it's just an intellectual perspective, then it's important to listen to what their perspective is. So to listen to the other person, to understand where they are coming from and what matters to them. And then for you to have your 5 minutes of fame, it's called the 5-5-5 framework. And so the person that has the disagreement with the project to have their 5 minutes with all their perspectives and all their thoughts and views and feelings, and then for you to have yours. And then in the middle, after you've both shared your individual perspectives and understandings of what's not working and how you want to see the project going forward, is then to come to some kind of compromise to meet in the middle so that everyone is appeased, and then the project gets done. And in this process of coming to the middle and then discussing how you can move forward, it's to remove the emotions, to remove the feelings, and to focus on the project, to focus on the thing, the outcome. And then when you're taking the feelings and the values out of the equation, and then when you're being very practical, this is where you can actually have a three-way win, a win for the project and a win for each person.
That was really brilliant. Thank you. Now, what about when it's in a personal relationship? Sometimes we're so close to things. And I think also bringing something up, especially if you think about family conflicts, it's your family, right? You're not getting away from them unless you make some serious decisions that you're going your own way. So your family's going to be there for as long as you're all alive. And to get to the heart or the root cause might involve opening some closets that have been closed for a long time. Is it possible not to open the closets and not to go backwards and yet still be able to resolve things in a timely fashion?
That's a good old chestnut to open up with, Dr. JACALYN. Yes, it is. And when anyone is focused on the past, nothing gets resolved in the past. And to keep bringing up old things that have happened in the past is the route to disaster. You will never you will never move forward when you're only focusing on the past. And so it's important to look at what's going on now and what's not working now, rather than looking at all that stuff way back, especially with families, because I don't know any families that don't have their own family arguments, even like the best of families, so the ones that look like model families will still have disagreements. And that's because we know each other so well. And so it's important to have that understanding that we know each other so well, and we know what buttons to press to upset the other person. And if we're on an off day, it's very easy. And there's a cliche that the Brits have, is that you always hurt the one that you love. I don't know whether that's the same in America and throughout the world. But, this is something that we say, that you'll always hurt the one that's closest to you, or the one that you have the most interaction with. And that's because you know them so well, and you can be a bit yourself and a bit, inconsiderate, because they know you and they almost get away with it. And they do it because they feel comfortable to be like that. And so it's important to focus on what's not working rather than the past. And more importantly, to be focused on solution rather than the problem, to air what the problem is and to listen to both sides of how you both see it, but then to look at a way of finding how you can both move forward so that you have a place that's good for both of you, rather than any lose situation. And it's important here in family situations to consider the person's feelings and emotions.
And wouldn't it be a beautiful thing if everyone did all of these things and did them on a proactive basis? It would be amazing. So we just had the Easter holiday, and there's been a number of other holidays that are being celebrated around the world. And this can be a time when there's a lot of conflict. So knowing you're going to be getting together with family members for the next holiday, what are some tips that you can share to help people prepare now?
Oh, holidays, yes, Dr. Jacqueline. These are times that, because we come together as a family, and because there is pressure to almost perform for it to be a merry occasion. And this is very much depicted in the soap operas and the dramas and films, that it's supposed to be a fun time. But, we're still human, and we're all going through our own things. There might be sickness. There might be an illness in the family, in terms of somebody having a cold or a flu, and so they're not able to join everybody. Or there might be something that's going on for them that makes them unwell in terms of their stress or their mental health issues. And so it is important to understand the family dynamic and what's good and what's not good, and if somebody's on a bad day, how to approach them. So my hot tips for family gatherings is to keep it light, is to keep it fun, perhaps to share some humor, some jokes that are convivial for everyone, rather than pointing the finger at any particular member of family, to come armed with a lot of humor and shared experiences in terms of good things that happen to you, and to be there in a place of listening, actively listening to the other person, not just to give, but to listen, because you are giving as you are listening. And sometimes if you're listening to someone in a conversation in the family for about 10 minutes, they will feel really heard, and that will diffuse any level of conflict that they would have felt previously. And so to actively listen, and what I mean by that is not listen to see when you can jump in with what your perspective is, or what your story is, or to one-upmanship what they've said, is to listen intently and to be there for them from the heart. And it might be they don't need you to solve anything or to make any comment. It might be that they truly need you to listen. And it might be that they need some words of inspiration from you. And because it's your family, know when it's time to share those words of inspiration or wisdom or kindness to them that you feel that you know they would benefit from. And it's important to be aware of people in terms of their moods when they're meeting with family, because it does cause for some people a bit of a pressure cooker experience where they're sort of gearing themselves up for that next argument, that next, one-upmanship, that they're expecting it. So rather than expecting it, be the one that comes in a place of harmony and a place of peace and a place of compassion and understanding. And take a breath before you say anything, because when you breathe and take a pause, what that will also do is diffuse your reaction if it's a negative one.
Fantastic insights there. Something else that's also coming up for me, and I think you and I have discussed it before, but you get to the family function and there's Uncle Herb and he's been overserved and he can't wait to tell you what he thinks about what you're doing. And he's got a captive audience because the entire family's there and he just lays into you. What do you do at that point in time?
I let him have his say. Which will diffuse the situation quite quickly, because if he just says what he needs to say without reaction or interaction from you, if he's not getting the feedback or the reaction from you, it diffuses quite quickly. I know that's really hard, especially in the family, because you're set up to rear at each other, is to just let them rip, and then they will calm down when they're not getting any reaction. So it is important to manage your emotions and your reactions, because they're doing it for effect.
I love the fact that you said just let it rip, which is great. Now, what I've also found, to your point, is after somebody has their say, it's like there's a big silence because there's the elephant in the room, which is this person losing their cool. And then there's really nothing more to say because the person they just said everything they had to say. And I might say, well, I guess you got it out, whatever it is you wanted to say. And then you just change the subject.
Yeah, I would just say something like, how's the meal, everybody? Sort of, would anybody like a top up? I would change the subject, because everybody else would be feeling uncomfortable. Everyone else would be feeling challenged by the situation. And so to keep the mood calmer, to interrupt with, something that's a bit mundane, like, do you need a top up? Or what do you think of the sauce? Or are you liking the meal? Something that's a little bit more blander to talk about, to change the topic.
Now, Caroline, what about when there's conflict and it's in writing? So, we're so busy with the texting and the WhatsApping and the messengering, and sometimes you can tell that one person is perceiving something one way. And I know for myself, because I am very quick to answer. I know you're not, you take more time, and I've had to slow down my sending a comment or a voice note, because sometimes I am not looking at the whole picture. So I take more time than I used to. I know that seems shocking, but how do you actually manage conflict when it's in writing, like a text message or a WhatsApp or something like that?
Well, you've got it in one. You actually don't respond straight away, because that's a reaction. If there is a conflict situation, you can tell, when it doesn't feel right, because it'll feel uncomfortable. And I will take my space, because I want to get over myself. I want to make sure that when I go back in a space that's thought out, that's meaningful, and that's right, rather than a reaction. It's very easy in our current times to just sort of type a quick response and then regret to our haste of sending that quick response. And so I've been taught, especially because my background's in marketing when I was in corporate, and I was in management right from the age of 19. And essentially we were taught not to respond straight away, because that is a knee-jerk reaction. And when we do knee-jerk, that's when it'll upset not only the other person, but yourself as well, because you didn't read everything, you didn't see anything. And, I'm human too, and I have knee-jerk reactions, and I do my very best not to respond and react straight away, to consider and to think and to make sure that I'm making the right decision, because it's important to me to make the right decisions at the right time. It might be the right decision, just not the right time. It might be the wrong decision, but the right time. And so it's important to weigh up all of those things. And I used to very much be considered in every communication. Now we are typing really quickly. It's not like the letter communication that we had when we were young, where you would be much more considered. Now it's too quick to fire a response, an email. And the challenge with that quick response is that that's when emotions can get very high.
And I think when the emotions get really high, that's when we stop thinking and we just start going down a path that is not going to work out too well. So I recently held a course, Setting Boundaries and Asking Permission, and there were a number of people in there who shared about the conflict they have in their own family, and being told by family members that you just don't listen, Mom. You don't listen. And the mother was basically said, which made a lot of sense, that as a mother, she sees her daughter going down a path that she doesn't think is going to work out too well for her. And so I bring it up because when you are a parent, typically you and I are not, but you would think parent wants the best for their child. So how does a parent manage wanting to just jump in and say, you're making a mistake, are you out of your mind, in terms of not giving the parent's opinion and still being supportive?
That's a really big question, Dr. JACALYN, because a parent generally wants their child to not suffer like they did. And if they can see something, they will generally step in. And that's a protective parent. And I know because I had that from my mum and dad, and they were always stepping in. And I remember turning around and saying, just let me make my own mistakes, because I won't learn otherwise. And I did make some mistakes, and there were some things that I decided to do that my mum and dad weren't keen on. And I went ahead anyway. And now my mum actually has this thing that she says to me, well, I can tell you what I think, but you're going to please yourself and do what you want anyway. And that's because we're both quite headstrong. The short and tall of it is they care, they genuinely care, and they don't want you to see. They don't want to see that you're making that mistake or heading for something that wouldn't be a good outcome. But, we're all we're all victims. And I say that genuinely, we're all victims of our own circumstance and experience. And so it's important to bear that in mind, that the other person is saying these things because they genuinely care, and it's not to hurt you. And it is important to weigh up what they're saying and consider how you feel about it, and then make your decision. But yes, it's, I'm not a parent, and yet at the same time, I've been in that space with my parents, and the world is a different place when I was a child growing up to what it was when my mum was growing up. And so we will always make decisions based on our experience of what was then rather than what is now.
It's a tough one. It's definitely a tough one. And at the same time, as we all age, then the children are in a position to say, hey, Mom, I don't think that's a great idea that you're doing this, that, or the other. And so everything kind of switches. So what I'm really taking away from our conversation today is a number of things. But first of all, if you can proactively set the stage, so to speak, for having cohesive and effective dialogue and communication, that in and of itself is a huge step. And then also anticipating that there will be conflict. I personally, I know you're like this as well, we're very curious. So we like to hear other people's opinions. I just was speaking to somebody on the phone today, and I said, I love meeting new people. I really do, because I am very curious. I do lose my patience quickly, and I'm easily bored just saying that. But if you set the boundaries and say, for example, with me, okay, my patience is short sometimes. I get easily bored, has nothing to do with you. But if we could keep our conversations to 30 minutes or so, that would be really great for me. And then you say, you know what, that makes a lot of sense. I understand. Or you could say, are you saying I'm boring? No, you're not boring. I just have an issue. I have a problem. My problem is I get easily bored. So that has nothing to do with you. But many times we'll take it on. We'll put it on like a dress and say, oh, no, it's about me, when it's really not.
That's absolutely true. And not everyone has the patience. In fact, I had a call from somebody I'd spoken to in the past as an inquiry in 2018, and he called back again in 2022. And when he originally called, he was 16. And I said that, I couldn't actually see him unless he was with his mum or a responsible adult, member of family, because of some of the things that he wanted to work with. And then he came back again in 2022, and he's come back again in 2024. And all the times that I've spoken to him, I've actually not charged him. And I turned around and I said, look, I don't wish to sound disrespectful, but actually, this is what I do for a living, and you're going to have to start paying me. And I'm more than happy to listen, and I'm more than happy to help you, but you'll have to start paying me. And he said, I get that. He says, but you've always been there. And it's something that, sort of a 16-year-old is going to have a different perspective from somebody that's 22. And I didn't feel I could say anything at 16, but at 22, I'm saying, hey, actually, this is what I do for a living, and I'm not a charity. And it was about me setting boundaries, because when he first called 6 years ago, there were no boundaries. And I just allowed, because he was in a severe state of anxiety and stress. And so it is important to have an understanding of what the other person's needs are at that time, and then being able to express what your own are. And if you have a short time span, to say, and if, not to take on somebody else's issues. If you've only got 30 minutes because you have a very busy schedule, well, then that's okay. Frequently I've had calls with people, and sometimes I've forgotten to ask them, is now a good time to speak? Because then about a few minutes into the call, they'll say, I've only got a couple of minutes, so if you can just let me know what you need, and then we can deal with it. And that, again, is because I've forgotten to ask, because I've launched straight in. So we're all human, and it's important to have an understanding that we don't know what's going on in the other person's life. We don't know what their schedule is, and we don't know what their goods and their bads are. And so it's important to allow yourself the opportunity to ask.
I'm really proud of you for sharing that, because that is not an easy thing to do, to know your worth and know your value. And that can definitely be a cause of conflict. And I'll give an example, which my primary role is running this platform. Obviously, there's a number of other things that seem to be adding on more and more lately, but people will come to me and they'll try to wheel and deal. And finally I'll say, listen, if you don't want to pay, I understand. You can go someplace else. There's lots of opportunities, but this is how I pay my bills. And sometimes people don't like that, but yet they have a business, they have a service, and they're getting paid for it. So it is kind of interesting. And to know, like what you just said about drawing the line, and someone's used to getting something for free from you, and then you have to say, wait a minute, we've got to change this. It's also setting the table for respecting yourself, and for the other person to respect what you do and what you offer.
Yes, and unfortunately, people have a different perspective about therapy. They'll probably spend money on holidays, and they'll probably spend money on going out, socializing, entertainment. But when it comes to therapy or coaching or mentoring, they probably don't see a value in that, although they're suffering and they're reaching out. And so it depends on what their values are as to where they'll spend their money. And so when people say to me they don't have the money, but they've just come back from a 2-month trip to Disneyland, all expenses, in with the family, I will be a little bit abrasive to them and say, well, you've just told me that you've come back from a 2-month holiday with your family, then surely that doesn't mean that there is no money. And this is, well, that's the reason that there is no money, or they've just bought 2 properties. And so it is about understanding their needs versus, what you can do for them. And I believe that people will pay you to solve their problems. And so there has to be some level of exchange of value. Otherwise, if there isn't, then that's where conflict will come in.
Absolutely. We are solving so many problems today.
Yeah.
We definitely are. And I'd like to end with one last comment, which is, and you mentioned this, you tapped into it a little bit earlier, but what would you say are the signs of healthy conflict?
Healthy conflict is when there's 2 different perspectives on the same topic. So it could be, let's take, for instance, a work project. So there's a problem with a project, an ongoing project, and 2 colleagues have different perspectives, different points of view. That is a good and a healthy conflict to have, because we all see things from our own filters. And so certainly in a work situation, it's good to see the other side of it, because it might be something that we didn't see or look at or have any appreciation of until we had that viewed. And then we can make a decision based on those perspectives. I always believe in a work situation, it's good to hear different sides of the coin, different perspectives, so that we can then decide which is the best way to go forward. And I'm going to give you an example. When I was doing some voluntary work a long time ago in junior chamber, I decided to run the social program because I wanted to get to know London. I'd just moved to London then. I was back in 2000, I think it was. And I wanted to get to know London. I thought, well, what better way to do it than to organise a social program? So I organised lots of different things. And when we were in the planning of it, the then person that was looking after the chamber, who was the president of the junior chamber in London, she said, we don't have any objectives for the social program. I says, well, why not? She says, because it's unimportant. And I said, I don't believe that to be the case. I've taken it on. I'm going to make it be an important part, because this is the cohesion of the members coming together. And there was a little bit of a battle, to say the least, going on between myself and the president at that time. And I did get some objectives in. And the short and tall of what happened there is that I won an award, a national award, for the most outstanding social program. And that was because I had actually got over half, almost 75% of the members attending my events. And instead of just being a meal in a restaurant, a small meal somewhere, or a bowling activity, I actually invited and collaborated with different organisations, which made the networking much stronger. And so I had a very different perspective, but I was met in the boardroom with, no, we don't consider that important. And yet it grew the chamber, and having a national award and recognition from the overall organisation was powerful for me. And it was in recognition of the fact that my perspective was different, and it indeed won awards.
Congratulations, Caroline. Super proud of you. How can people reach out to you, and what are the services you can provide?
Thank you, Dr. Jacalyn. You can reach out to me by email, which is nomorestress@live.co.uk, or call me if you're international, +44. If you're local, 07523 120 189. And I offer a service of helping you bust your stress. Stress can manifest itself physically, so physical ache and pain in the body. It can even be sleep problems. It can be emotional issues within your relationships. It can be sadness, loneliness, heartache. It can be mental stress. It can be depression, anxiety. So whatever it is, and it might be that you're walking around saying that you're not stressed. I'm not stressed, but I'm not sleeping and I've got this terrible ache and pain. And if you are one of those people that has aching and paining and not sleeping, that is how your stress is manifesting. And essentially, I am offering now an introductory offer of a 1-hour session for an incredible £50. And it is a way to break through at least 3 to 4 symptoms. So I identify root cause. I use root cause therapy and chakra psychology. And it's to help you move to a place from head to heart and inner peace. And we all have stuff that we handle that we're not feeling happy about. So allow me the opportunity to help you bust your stress.
Bust your stress. But I love it. Absolutely fabulous. Thank you, my dear friend, for being here today. I really do appreciate you and look forward to seeing you again soon.
Thank you. It's been a great show. It's gone quickly.
Yes, it has. And I'm just about to be interviewed myself by OC Publishing. So I've got to run, but thank you everybody for being here. We're going to close out with one of our sponsorships, and we look forward to having you back on our platform again soon. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Women of the Caribbean and around the world, are you tired of the status quo? Tired of barely making ends meet? Tired of giving maximum effort for minimum results? Are you in need of change, a fresh start, a new outlook, a new perspective? It's time to break through. Join us along with women from around the world at the Empower Her Escape, a 5-day all-inclusive royal cruise to the Bahamas and Florida. Connect with world leaders and influencers and begin afresh your journey to more. Hear dynamic speakers with sessions on women in leadership, the importance of mentorship, how to start a business from the ground up, financial literacy, an integrated approach to wellness and wholeness, and so much more. Guest speakers include First Lady Anne-Marie Davis of the Bahamas, Her Royal Highness Katerina of Yugoslavia Lady de Silva, Her Royal Highness Queen Sekothali Mepena of South Africa, and Coach Max, Global Multi-Six-Figure Wealth Coach. Cruise packages include 2 nights at an all-exclusive resort, gratuities, taxes, and port fees, red carpet welcome and extravaganza, course materials, and a souvenir gift bag, flight not included. The Empower Her Escape Cruise takes place on May 15th through the 19th, 2024, departing from the port of Palm Beach, Riviera Beach, Florida. Hosts for this life-changing event are Coach Cherish Hollingsworth of Florida and Coach Mercy Gilbert of the UK. For more information, visit our website at www.empowerherroyalescape.com or call us at 954-203-6608 or email us at cherishresiliencecoach@gmail.com. Connect, collaborate, celebrate at the Empower Her Escape Cruise.